Okay, yes, indeed it is. Once again, time for the KeNikka Lifestyle Podcast. We are back with a fresh Oak Island Weekly, a day late and $1 short, of course, but, it is Thursday, and we got it going this morning. Finally, we got a chance to watch the new episode, Casson's Ho, everybody. So we took it in, and of course, when I say we, I mean my lovely co-host. She's the one, the only, Nika, my lovely wife. Good morning again.
Good morning, Kenny. Good morning to our new returning listeners to our lifestyle podcast. And we are digging deeper into the Oak Island settings, I guess.
Deeper and deeper. Season 12, episode 13. It just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper.
And we have deep holes to dig. And
If you're a fan of rabbit holes and
this is it.
out there theories, I mean, this one will take you on more than you even knew could exist, folks. I know we've heard all these names before. I'm going to just throw this one out there because it's one that we heard in this week's episode, Duke Don V. I know we've heard all these names before.
We did?
I'm
don't
sure
recall
they've
that
said them
name.
before on this show. I'm sure they've brought this up before because, that they think it could be. The lead cross is from France, right?
Yes.
The big lead cross find.
Back in the day.
It's a few seasons back. I don't even remember now when they went and they went over there, right? But
Yes.
they determined that the lead was from
Germany.
France, South France.
Oh, yes, yes.
And this is like Rick's favorite find, the lead cross, because it is very like old Christian crosses used to have that loop at the top, and it does signify something that could have been Templarian. I know that's a made up word, but
And it was also one of their first finds. So it has a special place in their hearts.
yeah, there's an emotional attachment for sure. It has one of those. It kind of made the whole thing real again,
Yeah.
which is an interesting subject because a lot of the talk on the episode this week centered around believing in the treasure, talking about, I think, just the long lineage leading up to it, and this has been going on for so long, and this is
have
the
to.
definitive story of it. Like it's a hard story to ignore once you know all the details. It's like, okay, what's really going on here?
You have
I think
to
some of the most recent discoveries are fascinating from the standpoint that they are kind of giving some credence to some weirdness. Like, unless underground all of our feet right now is just a bunch of weirdness that happened like 200, 300, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Who knows? If there's stuff buried everywhere in the world, who knows? I couldn't tell you, but just the stuff that they are unearthing on this island is fascinating to me and continuing to bring up.
Okay, and that island, at least that location, it's like a Route 66. Somebody always gonna hit it, no matter which way you try to get to the.
Yeah, you're talking about like in old seafarers.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
you're always going to find this island, but it's not that big of an island. I think the Vikings, we have decided in recent years to acknowledge that they came here. And I think we've known that they came here a lot longer, at least in lore and legends, but they came here. And if you look at old maps, I mean, if you look at new maps and just look at the way that everything kind of follows the coastline from like Greenland and Iceland all the way around through northern Canada, and you can see a route start to develop where they could have theoretically not crossed the big giant body of water and stayed more along the coastal lines. And that makes more sense with the size of the Viking ships and to start figuring all this stuff out. Like we saw a French map this morning from 1720 where it's like California is on there. It's called California.
Yeah, it's a very detailed map with all the French names.
Yeah,
and
all the Latin American country names are on there. Honduras, Panama.
There was no Panama Canal back then, so
There
they
was
did
not.
have to go all the way down to the South Americas in order to get back up north. Or they could travel up north through the
Yeah.
Arctic Circle.
What's interesting is that the greater like Northwest Pacific part of the country, and really a lot of the middle America and northern parts, not southern, like Texas and New Mexico, everything there is kind of charted and labeled in tribes, Indians. They knew. But a lot of the Northwest Pacific is where there's like not a lot known. when they show California on the map, Los Angeles and San Diego are on the northern part of California, and it extends all the way down into what is today Mexico and stuff. And so it's just an interesting perspective on land and territory, and it's fascinating to look at.
If the map was accurate, we will be living in Mexico right now.
And we looked at this map specifically because it was part of Duke Don V's, and I'm saying his name hopefully correctly because I'm just trying to emulate what I heard on the show. It is not spelled Duke Don, Donv.
No.
It is not at all. So good luck looking that one up. But I think if you type Duke Don V the way I just said phonetically, you will find what you're looking for.
Oh, okay. Don't want dude name like that. Cool.
It's actually Duke DUC too, like Ducard more.
Oh, maybe that's his name, just shortened.
Well, it didn't say that in his Wikipedia.
Okay, so we had the episode today.
So yeah, we had an episode, exactly. And this was a lively episode, by the way. Thank you for the intro. It was fun. And yeah, so after the episode, we went on some expeditions of our own because we were like, who are these people again? And we're trying to become, I think, just more familiar with everything ourselves and give you guys this podcast that's well informed, at least. You know, we're just trying to follow what's on the show and look up the real life count, what is mentioned in the archives of known archives.
Absolutely. And then there's just so much going on and back and forth and different threads. There are different ideas being put forward. So you kind of have to keep them all separate.
It's tangled mess, right?
Right. It is a mess sometimes. And the editing doesn't help when they say we're going over there and the shots they were showing were done weeks and weeks ahead or advance, whatever.
You're making me laugh. You're making me laugh so much because you're spot on. The editing that is sold on this show, it's like, meanwhile in the swamp area, and it's like pouring rain, and it was just sunny like 2 minutes ago, and we're like, meanwhile in the swamp, it's like cloudy, misting. Everyone's like got rain gear on. It's like, come on, this cannot be the same day.
You know, like you'd be so pissed off. You're like, where's the continuity?
Oh man, yeah. I as an editor, it would probably get to me, but I would probably learn on a show like this that you got to let it go really fast and just roll with it. I don't think this is happening necessarily in order. I think it's just being kind of told in an order that is built for narrative, you know, because a lot of this happened already. It happened and it's been over since last November. And
so we haven't heard any good news that they did find some magic treasure. Therefore, spoiler alert.
Well, yeah, and we are getting down to it, by the way. I was looking into this before the episode, and it looks like from everything I'm seeing, there's not a lot of episodes left this season to come. So this is kind of interesting, but this was episode 13, and we have 16 episodes listed. So there could be a possibility that we're coming down to the final 3 episodes of season 12. And again, I want to repeat, this is 12 seasons.
12 years.
And this is 16 episodes. It hasn't always been that many, but it has been recently, you know.
At least they are consistent with the length. Not like every other studio just gives you 8 episodes.
They keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter. You know, the only one that's really got it going, though, is Apple with the slow horses. They figured it out.
They do. And it's a shorter, nice, concise story. Maybe we need to do a review on that one.
We do. We need to do a review of Slow Horses sometime and we need to do some more narrative stuff. We got some stuff cooking. Baseball's kicking back up, so it's tough for us because we got our sports show, and we only have so many hours in a day, folks.
And there's only 2 of us, so.
There are, but it is what it is. We are enjoying the treasure hunt. So unfortunately, yeah, we are getting down to the end of this season, but I want to tease something here because I've felt, at least for the past few weeks, and even since we started doing these episodic podcasts about Oak Island Weekly, quote unquote, that this season felt like different. There was like a sense of urgency, and I know it's part of the show and the editing technique and style. However, and I get reinforcement week after week after week that this season feels different. It feels like heavier. And again, you don't know what order these things are really, truly happening when you have things happening like we just talked about, where it's like, meanwhile, in the swamp, and it's like everyone's dressed different and it's raining, and it's like, well, was this really right after this, or was this like 2 or 3 days, or did this happen even earlier? But what do they know when in each different scene is also impossible almost to know. Do they know about the gem that was found this week earlier? And then when they're looking in the money pit, there's more excitement because they found this gemstone on lot 5 or something. And you know what I mean? Like that's an extreme example, of course, but we don't know.
We will never know.
We don't know where in the square shaft was found. The little box hole underground in the swamp that they found this year. The brick, like cubby hole, hidey hole, as Rick called it, right? Rabbit hole number 3900.
That would be nice if they do find another one in that location. What you're talking about is in the northern part of the swamp that was never excavated.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that at the end of the episode. No spoilers as we go through this, because it looks like that box is going to come back into play somehow, some way. And that is me quoting Snoop Dogg, and that's about as much as you're going to get out of me. Somehow, some way, I keep coming up with funky ass shit like every day. Okay, let's get on with the show, everybody. The episode started with a bang because the big Cassion was brought aboard. This is a 7-foot diameter tube that they're going to wedge deep underground.
They're going to try to go 150
200
deep.
feet. Yeah.
200 feet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's what I wrote down in the intro, that they're going to be pushing to 200 feet deep with just the tube area.
Right.
And then they have to use this hammerhead claw grabber to like pull out the dirt one level at a time.
Well, they are hoping if it's wide enough, if they do find the chapel vault or the treasure chests,
Yep.
they can just scoop it up and scoop it up.
Scoop something up. Yeah, exactly. I wrote down some fun quotes here. Marty says it's time to dig. He always gets excited, I think, when things are actually happening and not being planned. Marty looks at planning as a burden on money and time. It's a necessary evil, and he knows that it needs to happen, but it also like probably infuriates him to see dollars going out of the budget without a lot of movement. But he's also probably experienced and seasoned enough to know that there is going to be a reward coming for that money. I don't know if it's going to be actual treasure, but you will see results of that work eventually. And now we're starting to see it. So that makes him excited. He's excited. Everyone else is seeming to get excited.
They were very excited to bring in the old digging crew, the ROC.
Oh, yeah. Rock Equipment. We got reintroduced to Vanessa again. We saw her last week when they were talking about, or 2 weeks ago, because I didn't talk about this. We had no Oak Island last week.
Right.
It was a little bit of a miss. I missed that one in the intro.
It's okay. We didn't know why. It wasn't due because of the holiday or what happened. We just don't know. That was not.
History Channel is giving Oak Island the week off for President's Day, everybody, on Monday. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It could just be to stretch it out, because this is like I said, this looks like it's the final 4 episodes of the season. And I want to talk about that at the end as well. So I'm excited to talk about some of these things, because we don't know the order. We don't know when this Cassion is coming in and how it relates to everything going on in the swamp with regards to the excavation going on there. We have the lot 5 excavation going on. We have Gary and other people, Doug Cromwell, playing like map detective with these old paper drawings that were discovered by somebody that was there a long time ago.
Multiple storylines.
There's so much stuff going on in multiple storylines, and you don't know how the producers are sort of weaving those together on the back end and when they were all actually happening. And we're not going to be able to figure that out. We're just following along the story that they're presenting to us.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it as what they present to us and then do our own research just to supplement the information.
But basically, this opening scene was just a startup for the setup of all these operations that they're going to start. Speaking of the swamp, we went there right after this setup, and we got kind of reintroduced to what was happening here. There's a bit of an excavation / exploration going on. Right away, we had Alex and Rick, so nephew and uncle in the swamp with Katya. No Gary this week. I always get sad when Gary's not in it, because he just brings the joy, the Australian joy of treasure hunting. He's a full-on treasure hunter, you know?
Yeah.
We also had Billy operating the arm.
The scooper?
the arm scooper. I don't even know the technical name for this shit. I'm terrible. I probably used to when I was younger, you know?
No, don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, exactly. Damn. Truth by KeNikka on the podcast this morning, everybody. But anyways, we had some swamp excavation continuing, and this is where we got Rick. He always seems to just eagle eye something, and here he found a wooden stake. I made a vampire comment to you because I said that's the mystery. There was vampires on Oak Island. They found a wooden stake. This thing was really nicely hand carved, though, right?
It did look like a stake. It really did.
You know, it looked like a door wedge a little bit to me, like a stake you would put on the ground to keep your door open.
Okay.
Back in the day.
Much bigger.
Yes, much bigger, definitely. But it kind of had that like just that isosceles triangle type shape, where it was very thin triangle.
Well, if they find silver right next to it, we know that vampires did exist on Oak Island.
Yeah, followed by some garlic plants, roots. We got all three. We know we're in trouble. I would get off of there immediately and be like, this is haunted.
Really? I'd be like, I want to be a vampire.
Hey, call a witcher. Am I right?
Call the witcher.
All right. Well, from there we went to lot 5, and this is when the episode really started to pick up, in my opinion. Jack was here, and he was here with Fiona Steele.
Enthusiasm.
And Todd Langseth.
Oh, that's her assistant.
Jack always brings the enthusiasm. That's why I feel like the episode started to pick up. But they found some glass gemstone here.
Well, they thought it was a diamond.
Well, Jack right away was like, "Is that a diamond?" And it's like, no. But it is something cool nonetheless that we're going to find out more about later, I should say, from the lab. And that's where we kind of left this, was like, it looks like they kind of lowered their expectations that maybe this is a glass gemstone and we need to have that lab look at it.
It was pretty decent size. It was like a nickel maybe size.
100%. After this, we get a recap of like some of the older jewelry finds that they've found on the island over the years. And, you know, this is definitely kind of comes across as filler material sometimes to me, but also like it's good to get a refresher because of what we said earlier. There's so many threads that they've followed and rabbit holes that they've gone down and been led to. But this is right along with there, you know, a gemstone right up there with those ruby gemstone and brooches that they found. So definitely a cool find. Jack even called it a top pocket find, and I was like, oh. When you find out Gary's not in the episode later, it's like, man, if I'm Gary, I'm coming after him for royalties and being like, you stole my line, bro.
Is it trademarked?
I don't know. But Gary, you need to trademark that and at least sell a shirt. You know, like you need to have a shirt with a top pocket on it that says like top pocket.
That's a great idea.
You now owe me 5% of the royalties for this idea.
How about we just design it?
That's not a lot. I think you can give it to me, and I think you're going to make bank. So I'm giving up a lot on the deal, Gary. Hear me out. Call us, KeNikka Lifestyle Podcast. You can figure out how to get a hold of us.
Oh, sure. All right.
That information is out there if you wish to proceed with this business transaction. We hope you do. We would love that. And then we can keep doing this podcast for another 10 seasons.
I think we should bring Gary on and have a chat.
Season 22 of Oak Island. We're bringing in a new Cassion.
Oh my God.
21-foot Cassion.
And this is going the direction of Star Trek, the next generation. Oak Island.
Oak Island, the next generation, season 1. Katja Drayton.
And Alex.
Lagine.
Gotta get the kids now.
And their kids.
You know who wasn't there? Peter.
Peter Frenelli must have gone back to school for a minute.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
As the season winds down, maybe spring break's over.
Oh, maybe.
Comes out for a couple of weeks. No, this is probably in like September-ish, August, September, October-ish, because you figure they close up pretty quick at the end of October with winter there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what's happened in previous seasons, at least. So when November rolls around and the season starts on TV is actually when about everything kind of just finished.
Okay.
Well, that gives it a lot of time to get all these episodes done. And that might be the cause for the delay, too, when they have like a week off. It might be to help, you know, the post-production team buy an extra week, because editing is a time-consuming process on a show like this, I'm sure. And weaving those stories together
in
is time
keeping them
consuming.
on track. So yes, there's confusion, but you got to keep it in line.
Well, speaking of keeping things on track, let's keep things moving on this podcast, everybody, because there's a lot to get to. We next got introduced to the wash machine that we were discussing a little bit earlier, but okay. We next got introduced to the wash machine that was going to be brought in as a part of this Cassion digging operation in the money pit. And this machine was a lot more extravagant than the previous one that they had in. Sorting by size, washers, like a lot going on here.
If you play video games, that's a level up of your equipment.
Correct. Yeah. They like basically spent some coin that they had, I guess, saved up or earned, and they upgraded their sorting machine from last time. Exactly. You would even see like an animation, like a booger boop boop. Exactly.
I like those animations. I think they help to visualize what is happening.
Yeah, they show you exactly what you're getting for your money, including a paint job sometimes, everybody. This one was a nice fire engine red.
It was. It looked brand new.
It did. It looked brand new and high end.
Vanessa went shopping.
Definitely. Hopefully it pays off with some of the stuff they find. They did already put it to use. It has something called a chopper, I wrote. The spoils get washed and separated. That's what they call that part of the machine. And then from there, we actually went to the lab. We got Rick, Emma, Carmen, the Smithy. One of my favorite characters, by the way. And Craig and Doug were there as well. And they got analysis of this spike that was found last week when Doug brought in this new map. And Gary actually found this spike. Gary, who was missing in action this week. Where were you, Gary? But we get this analysis of this stake from the Smithy, and we actually get an interesting thing that rarely happens on Oak Island. We get a little contradiction. We get a little double opinion here. Emma, from her laboratory analysis, says that this is from the mid to early 17. The Smithy disagrees. He says it's very old. He dates it to earlier than that because of the fiber, and the metal was formed under high heat in his mind. So he's going basically purely off of the eyeball test, and Emma's going off of the metal analysis. Did I make up a word there? Anyways, what do you think, Nika? Who do you think's got the sharper eye here? Are you trusting science, or are you trusting your eyes?
I go with the Smithy on that one. He might have the metal, the composition of the metal. Yes, that's one thing. But Emma wasn't quite sure when it was made either. That was a ballpark of mid 1700s. And he went to like 1600s.
Yeah, I don't think we know for sure how accurate all these tools even are. You know, and it's good to keep that into perspective as we watch, because you can start to make some crazy opinions, I guess, if you just take the analysis at its word all the time and be like, oh, well, it has to be this, it has to be this, and it can lead you into ignoring other things that might possibly be there.
And science is never settled. There are other evidence that come out, then you have to move the dates, change your tactics or whatever.
And there's always rabbit holes and new things happening. And we're going to get into all of that before this is over today, because there's some really fascinating stuff to talk about coming up. All right, after the spike, we get this big next morning narration. And this is where we have the entire fellowship of the dig, as Marty called it, show up. You know, like we get the whole team, and we counted 28 people in the semicircle. And 9 of those people appear to be from Rock Limited alone, or Rock, the digging company, ROC. And then we also spotted, if you look at the overhead drone shot that they had, it looked like 6 people were in the like north upper right quadrant of the framing. So if you're looking down overhead and you look in the upper right corner, you'll see 6 people standing there. Some you can just see their legs, a couple people you can see full body, but it's such a wide angle and they're standing in shadows. It's really tough to see all of them right away.
We don't know whether they were part of the crew or part of the filming crew.
Exactly. I don't know. I might tend to say they were part of the filming crew, but either way, it's pretty cool to see the whole size of the operation, including the filming crew, that there's 34 people at least hanging out on the
Yeah.
island at one spot, making this happen. That's cool.
Yeah,
And
when you
he,
take the new crew that arrived for the dig, that's a lot of people.
yes. And they went with this whole fellowship vibe, and I think they kind of continued it throughout the whole scene because we kind of had some like Lord of the Rings music. We had this like Elrondish speech by of course Rick, the speech giver, but it had some Lord of the Rings triumph music under it. You know, he loves to put their work into perspective, I guess, and talk about its meaning and importance.
I loved how he always asks everybody how excited they are to be there and looking for the treasure.
Well, we've seen these moments before, you know, and this moment is about actually naming the Casson, right?
Yes.
And they came up with the name TB, which I believe stands for what they were talking about in this speech, or what Rick was talking about, true believers. And he says, we are all true believers. And well, I don't know if I would say that they are all true believers for sure. Laird comes to mind. However, they all seem committed to at least doing the work the right way, the way Rick has always talked about doing it from the start. He's always been about not being disruptive and trying to preserve as much as they possibly can. And I think he won Laird over, you know, with that mentality time and time again.
Well, Laird comes in as an archaeologist, and that is a slow going process. So I can see their relationship getting stronger because of it. You know?
I agree. And it was fun to also see at the end of this, the women got a little bit of recognition on the island, everybody, including the youngest, newest crew member, Katya Drayton. And we didn't see Gary as part of the 28, so perhaps there's 29. Don't worry, everybody. Gary's going to be back next week.
Pete wasn't either.
Yeah,
That's another
and Peter Frenelli. So
Yeah.
perhaps there's even more, and we could be missing even more.
Yeah.
But good catch before we get out of here, because the ladies pressed the button. Katya got to do the honors, and the caisson was getting thrust into the ground, and it was officially underway.
Big machinery movement.
It was. They all seemed a little bit impressed, even with the size and scope of the operation.
Oh yeah, it was a big stick going inside the hole. Well, that's what it was.
Thanks, Nika. All right. Well, I'm just going to leave that one for the listeners and move on to the lab, everybody. The lab was where we went to next. And speaking of Laird, Laird rarely gets this excited, but Laird was excited when they got into the lab, even before they unveiled these findings. You know, you could just tell he was a little bit like, hey, guys, we got something here. We got something. And this went back to that glass gemstone that was found.
Do you think because they found that gemstone that Laird become the true believer?
I don't know, but I think he's just always like a cool that anything interesting is found. That's a interesting find because it has a unique composition, as we're about to learn. But we had Rick, Marty, Alex, Emma joining Laird in the lab. And we learned that this glass gemstone that was found at the beginning of the episode was not, in fact, a diamond. Confirmed, not a diamond. Sorry, Jack. I can understand why you rushed to that quick judgment based on the way it looked, but not a diamond. Glass gemstone confirmed with a very high lead content, yes?
Yes, this is the beginning of what I call the fake jewelry business.
It is, actually. It's a fascinating little tale here. And, you know, I didn't even look this guy's name up, but it was George Frederick Swass. Is that right?
He was a French jeweler. I think you got the name correct. He was adding certain elements into the powder glass. The fake jewelry was for the French high society, and it started in 1734.
Yep. I got all that written down.
Okay.
1734, it was invented. These are artificial gemstones, and they were all the rage of French high society. Apparently, they were just as valuable, according to the show, as actual real gemstones. And
That's because they didn't have the technology to check whether it's real or not. So it will blend with the real diamonds and it will look just like it.
yeah, so if it's about stature, and this was all before the bourgeoisie, that was 60 years away still from this time period.
It's all
at
about
least.
the statue.
It's all about stature and about high society, French high society. And you still probably have like the tail end of the Renaissance here, I guess, spreading from Italy to France. Because, I mean, it did spread around Europe.
Well, it was like when you said 1734, it was invented. So they were still innovative.
Correct. They were, exactly. And this actually was interesting to me because this particular gemstone, according to what came back from the lab, was pressed from a mold.
Right.
And that means that the contents were heated up before this was done. And this is how you made the artificial looking gemstone. And it was made of bismuth, I wrote down, bismuth, and thallium. This is what I wrote down. And you used all three of these ingredients. You melted them at a high heat and then liquefied them and pressed them into a mold.
Yes, but you have to add them to the crushed glass.
Oh, correct. Crushed glass as well. So it gives it that diamond shine at the end. Bing. Exactly. Well, this is what led them back to Duke d'Anville because he was French and high society and went and explored this region in 1746. There was an expedition, Duke d'Anville, and we get a little backstory on him and visiting Oak Island, and it just kind of leads to more questions like is and how all of this is potentially connected to the Money Pit area.
So if they were doing the French expedition, I'm thinking the French coast, they would have to go north and follow the coastal lines and then down by Nova Scotia. How long do you think that kind of a trip took place?
It makes sense that they said that the journey took 3 months.
Okay.
And if you just go straight across the Atlantic, even on old ships, I would have a hard time that it lasted that long, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes more sense to me that they followed the coastlines. And it just, it brings a lot of things into question, right? Columbus had already gone across the Atlantic, so I just, 3 months? I don't remember it taking that long.
They had to go around the coastal lines when you think about this.
But I don't
3
think
months.
Columbus did.
No, Columbus, who knows which way he went.
Well, he diaried it. They talk about it on some programs on Ancient Aliens. And so he did have a diary and where they were at certain points.
True.
It's interesting. Yeah, I would love to see more information about what routes they were taking on all these expeditions.
This show gives you this doorway to the history. If you're really interested in the subject matter, you can just deep dive into those rabbit holes and figure out what really happened.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to see like San Diego named on a map in 1720 and not Los Angeles or any of the other California cities that we know today, but San Diego is there and it has the same name today, you know, but it was not even remotely anything American.
No,
or America didn't even exist. So
Si, senor.
Yes, indeed. All right. So that was fun to get this little history lesson. And I was also intrigued enough to look up Duke d'Anville online after the episode. And there's not a lot of information about him. He went to Oak Island for sure on this expedition, but he died shortly after they got there, apparently. So I'm curious why they put so much stock into this guy. And I'm excited to hopefully learn more about the secrets of what was going on with this expedition that is not written about on Wikipedia, I guess.
Well, if he died, maybe the secret where he buried the treasure died with him.
The one thing that's interesting is that it was when he set out from France, he set out with the largest known military force ever to set sail for the New World prior to the Revolutionary War.
Military, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this was because they were at war with Britain over like the Canadian territories. If you know history, you'll know like shortly after this, a young General George Washington for the British Army helped defeat the French once and for all in what is known as the French Indian War. I learned about this in grade school, believe it or not, and I doubt they learn about it in grade school today. I watched a movie about George Washington when I was like in 5th grade, I think, 4th or 5th grade, but I think it was 5th, and it was good. And he was young, and he was commanding British soldiers first in the movie.
Oh,
and
there
everyone
was
was
no-
like, why is this? Didn't we fight the British? And they were like, yeah, well, he was a British general. So fascinating. This was all French-Indian War. This was 1746. That war, as far as I remember, started in like the 1750s, but they were still fighting, I guess, for territory at this point in time, back and forth, without having declared war, I guess, on each other. So it
That's
doesn't
what
surprise me. It makes total historic sense. And boy, the Native American Indians must have been like, these are crazy, crazy people.
No kidding. With their wigs and swords.
Why do they make themselves look old? All right. Well, that was fun. And yes, again, kind of wondering how all of this could be connected to the treasure or money pit. It's a little odd. It's a little too late for me. I like the late 1600s better as like a hiding spot. Kind of pre all the military activity maybe going on here. That makes more sense to me, especially when you have Spanish treasure ships that were known to exist and things like that. Well, the show moved on to give us a little glimpse of the first caisson excavation, and they had mentioned that the caisson itself was almost at its target depth. And then we got back into the swamp area with Billy, Katya, and Alex. And I wrote down Alex saying, like, they have to carefully consider everything we see. And I understand what he means. A swamp is a swamp. It's exactly what it's muck and murk, right? And it's hard to know if things were just kind of randomly displaced here over time with like hurricanes and storms on the island, or whether or not a man deliberately moved it here.
I think
Or a
that's
woman.
their dilemma, to find the man-made structures and separate them from the natural occurring things.
Yeah,
Whether
exactly.
they happen earlier and the swamp covered them up, or vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I would want to dig up the entire swamp after finding that square hole a few weeks ago. And we're going to talk about that square hole again in a minute. But I would want to keep looking, and it's hard. It doesn't look like easy work at all.
Remember how hard they were fighting to get that swamp drained? It
Oh,
took
yeah.
forever because
Oh, yeah.
they had issues. The water was coming in, and we
Oh, yeah.
saw it today. The water was still coming in.
Yeah, it's like when they called in Dr. Ian Spooner here, because it's almost like they called him in immediately. They found some rocks and some boulders underground. One of them looked like it had a big white line in it, if I remember.
Yeah, I thought it was the scooper that made that line. But
Yeah, it might have been. They didn't address it, so it could have been the scooper. It wasn't Excalibur or anything cool. Sorry, guys.
wrong movie.
But this was fun, and Alex, he says they got to call in Dr. Spooner, so he's there immediately. I think he's like on standby now. We're getting down to the final 4 episodes here, so he's on standby. And he says it's man-made. Let's see where it goes, basically. So, yeah, more man-made objects found underground in the swamp area here, and a lot of things seem to be pointing in weird right directions, right? Like they're finding things in the swamp, they're finding things on lot 5, they're finding things in the money pit area, and that's where we begin on the new day after the swamp scene. Marty, Adam, Vanessa, and Terry Matheson are there, and wood is coming up from the first caisson.
More wood. They find more wood.
They're at about 90 feet here, I wrote.
Yes.
According to Terry, they got wood coming up, wooden structures, a support beam. One of them, Terry feels is axe cut. He's rubbing his finger over the edge of he's like, this is axe cut right here, you know? It looks like it's pretty smooth. I'm not there to touch it myself, but I have to trust his judgment, and
It did look like it was cut.
definitely did. So wooden's coming up, wooden structure, support beam. And then in the next grab, we get more wood. And I get Marty saying, carry on. And then we go to the washer. And here we meet a new character, Derek Couch, everybody. Woo! Welcome to the show, Derek.
And he's part of the new crew that arrived with the dig.
Yes, he was part of the Fellowship of the Dig, and he is working on this new washer machine where they are bringing the spoils. So from what I can see here, we get Charles Barkhouse?
Bark.
Okay, Charles is manning this whole washer machine operation, at least from a manager standpoint. He's directing the crew.
Yeah.
And Derek is working on the crew, and he brings like what looks like an old nail, and he brings it, and Rick comes down and holds the nail in his hand, and he's like, oh, it feels very old just by the weight of it. Pretty exciting stuff. We go back to the, go ahead.
Is this where he's like, I'm available, I can volunteer, I'm
Yeah.
available, and you can just put me to work anywhere?
It was exactly this point, and they were like, yeah, we're good. Sorry, Rick. They don't need you at the washing machine today. No, I don't think that was a diss.
No.
It was just kind of edited that way. by accident.
It
So
was funny.
yeah,
It's
we
a
just
funny moment.
we kind of both looked at each other and laughed and had a shared. Did they just cut Rick out of the washing machine? Okay, so we went right back to the money pit, and Alex joins everybody there. Now he and Katya are basically metal detecting and searching the spoils as they come up.
Yes.
And then from there, they're taken to the washing machine somehow. We didn't really get a lot of like the in between of how that works, but that's what's happening. And they keep finding more wood. Terry is convinced that they are man made wood beams. And then they also find this very old wrought iron stake. So that's interesting.
Yes.
More metal.
Because they don't know whether it is the original chapel vault or unknown tunnel that leads to the chapel vault.
Or the original money pit where there was like
Yeah.
supposedly every 10 feet like layers of logs, right? Like
Yeah.
so what is coming up now? They find this iron stake, and I wrote down that they're at like 90 feet here. So I think I jumped the gun earlier when I said they were at 90 feet. This is where they were actually. This is that grabber now that's going through the tube that they put in the ground, 200 feet supposedly.
Scoops up.
And now they have the grabber going inside that tube that's scooping up all the leftover remains and hoping that they are going to find something down here.
The treasure will come up. I love how they all talk like this is it. They're going to find this big box of jewels and treasure and coins.
Well, and that's where we leave things, honestly, this week. This was kind of how things wrapped up, was where we got the digging operation going and the washing machine is working. The Lot 5 operation continues. The swamp operation continues. And then we get my favorite segment of Oak Island, which is what's happening on the next Oak Island. Because they got to give you that tease, you know? And here we got to see some glimpses of what appears to be some exciting stuff coming next week, Nika. I'm excited.
There was a lot of people in the war room and they were discussing a map. And I'm not
Well,
sure
first
what
off,
map is.
hold on. You're always jumping the gun, Nika. You're always skipping, and you skipped your own thing. The first thing they showed in the next time is the Roman numeral 3. Now that was a jump to conclusions, Matt, by Alex. If you don't know the joke, check out Office Space sometime. But Alex, they appear to be pulling up more wood, man-made, from underground in the scooper next week. And one of them appears to have 3 man-made notches in it, like in the shape of a Roman numeral 3. Interesting, but the notches are there nonetheless, and it's coming up from like well under 100 feet underground. It's crazy, Nika. Okay, so that's what they showed first. So more wood, more interesting stuff. Then we get a little shot of Jack and Gary, and we get the spoiler alert. Gary is back. Gary's fine, thank goodness. Gary finds something, and like the shot of Jack, I just wrote his head explodes. Like,
If you see emojis with the exploding head, that's Jack.
yep. Whoa. And we get a big enthusiastic whoa. So
fantastic.
I mean, Jack, I'm putting it on you right now, buddy. If this is a letdown, you are hired, my friend. You need to be an actor.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah,
you are selling it, dude.
If they're not gonna find any treasure, he might have a future in some acting.
Well, speaking of treasure, the last part of this tease is what got me the most excited, because it looks like there's another, and oh my gosh, the square cubby hole, hidey hole is on the map. Is that true, Nika?
That's what it's shown on the map. And I was really curious, where is this map
Well,
from?
they were showing a book, and they were referencing a book, and so you did some digging after the episode, and what did you find?
I thought it was the book by Xena. I forget her.
Xenia Halpert.
Yes.
She
wrote
was
this
the
book.
Templar researcher that passed away, unfortunately.
Yes, a few seasons back, if I remember.
In one of those seasons. Yeah, sad stuff. She was really into the Templar theory and was convinced that she had some important map type documents, right?
Yes.
That dated back all the way to like the Sinclair family and Henry Sinclair.
And the map was translated from French. So it was originally a French map.
Yep.
We don't know what this is the exact map or not.
It's interesting that the French keep coming up and the Templars because, as we know from history and Friday the 13th, they are arch enemies, right? And what if they both knew about the material wealth that was stolen and they were secretly fighting over it here on this weird island in Canada? I don't know.
Biblical treasure.
Biblical treasure. That's what they say in the teaser.
Yes.
And damn,
Who else gonna have a biblical treasure?
I know.
Templars.
I know. The Vatican, which by the way was in France, by the way, people, until and well past Friday the 13th in history. Like, it was not in Rome. It was not the Vatican City that we know and see today in the movie.
I believe it was,
What's it called? Conclave.
Avignon in France. That was the
I don't remember exactly. Its origins were in France, and a lot of people think that the stories of Da Vinci Code are true. Like, Mary went to France and raised the children there, and like the whole royal bloodline thing and everything is, and it all stemmed from there.
that was part of the Roman Empire. Or we're talking southern France.
Yes, and like all people who crave power, the French kings got rid of it. They felt threatened by
Of course.
these religious
doesn't wanna-
powers, so they put an end to it.
Nobody wants to let go of their power.
Or did they, everybody? Was the biblical treasure hidden on an island somewhere in the North Atlantic?
That's right. And Rick and Morty's are fighting.
Rick
it.
and Marty.
Rick-
Wrong show, Nika. Boy, if Rick and Morty were looking for the Oak Island treasure, that would be a hell of a show.
You know what? We can
there-
ask AI to make that.
There would probably be a lot more sex jokes, I would
Oh,
guess.
definitely. Coming from a teenager, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Can confirm. We were wondering, how did Marty and Doc become friends in Back to the Future? It's never explained. It's just accepted. A teenager who plays guitar in a cool rock band is somehow friends with a mad scientist. What, is it just to use his sound system at the beginning of the movie? Like, I have a hard time believing that. There's got to be more to this story, everybody.
You got to put this in a perspective of time. 90s, things did happen.
80s.
Or 80s. Even more plausible.
No, I know. I hung out with my neighbor, John Stites, and I played ping pong with him in the basement.
There you go.
It was fun. Yeah,
That's what happened back in the day.
that's what happened. You were allowed to do that. Not nowadays. I don't even know if we know our neighbors anymore.
That's so sad.
It is, but at least we know you, our listeners, and thank you for checking out once again this episode of Oak Island Weekly. We got long today because I think we missed a whole week. It must have made us want to go long-winded, and hopefully you got a lot out of it because we got a lot out of the episode, and we're excited for what's next, everybody. As you can tell, that map document alone has me itching for next week's episode, which is now just a few days away because we're a day late and $1 short this week. So happy Thursday, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Adios.